Good morning, students. I hope all of you are well. And as I told you in our last lesson that I would take this week as a revision week, and revision week of all those chapters that were done in the classes so far. So today we are going to revise the last chapter of our revision week of our covered material. The last chapter of our covered material, that is chapter 28. Here you see. So we covered 24 to 28, and this is the last chapter we are going to revise, that is 28, transformation around the globe. And from next week, inshallah, we are going to begin new lessons. So it is my request to memorize or learn by heart all the important things we did in these lessons. So here we move. Okay, so today we are revising chapter 28, and in this you will learn, the first lesson I have taken is China resists outside the influences. So in this lesson, you have seen how China dealt with foreign influences and what were the causes and effects of problems that was faced by China in the 80s and early 90s. Few of the terms we are going to revise, which we usually read in the lesson, like first term is Opium War, and I still remember that we read this war in detail in our class. So what was Opium War? It was a war between Britain and China over the opium trade, and opium was a dangerous drug. Then we have extraterritorial rights. What is extraterritorial rights? These are the rights of foreign residents to follow the laws of their own government rather than those of the host country. Then there was a rebellion, Tapping Rebellion, and this rebellion was against the Qing dynasty. And then sphere of influences, we read this term sphere of influences in the lesson. It means the areas that were under control. It was the areas in which a foreign nation controls trade and investment. And then we have open door policy. What was open door policy? It was a policy that was proposed by United States, and it gave all nations equal opportunity to trade in China. Then we have Boxer Rebellion. It was also a rebellion, and that was the purpose of this rebellion is to end foreign influences in China. Next we have modernization in Japan, and in this lesson you have learned about the steps taken by Japan to modernize, and about its growth as an imperialistic power. Then the few terms from this lesson I collected. Treaty of Kangwa, it's very important. What was Treaty of Kangwa? This treaty was between United States and Japan, opening trade between the two nations. And then we have learned about Meiji era. What was Meiji era? It was a era, like it was a period of rule by Emperor Mutsuhito, and that was from 1867 to 1912. Meiji era, it's very important era. And then Russo-Japanese War. What was Russo-Japanese War? You have to see it in detail in your books again. It was a war between Russia and Japan that was fought in 1904. And then there was another term, annexation. Annexation, what does it mean? It means addition of territory. So after this I am going to play a video that was about modernization in Japan. So you just watch this video, and after that we will cover we will revise another lesson, and at the end, don't forget, we will have essential questions. So here I am going to play a video for you. Please watch it. Okay, so it's up in here. Okay, so here now we are moving to our next slide. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so now next is about turmoil and change in Mexico. Next lesson. So in this lesson, you have read about revolution and reform in Mexico, and compare the major accomplishments of Mexican leaders discussed in this lesson. So in this lesson, we will revise the terms like Antonio. It's a name of a leader in Mexico's fight for independence, Antonio, and he was a leader. And then we have Bento. He was also a leader of La Reforma. What was La Reforma? It was a movement in Mexico that aimed at achieving land reform, better education, and other goals. And then we have Porfirio. He was a dictator who came to power after Juarez. And then we have Francisco. He was an enemy of Diaz, who believed in democracy. Then we have Pancho Villa. He was a popular leader. It's again a name of a leader of Mexican Revolution. And at the end we have Emiliano Zapata. He was also a leader of a powerful revolution and army. And again, I'm going to play a very nice video about the turmoil and change in Mexico that is related to it. And after this, we are going to have few questions.
By the turn of the 19th century, America and Haiti had achieved their independence, and the French Revolution had ousted its monarchy and was at war with Europe. Mexico, on the other hand, was firmly under Spanish control, but its society was organized around race. Spanish-born Peninsulares largely ruled, angering a lot of the Spanish descendants, or criollos. This tension caused the outbreak of the conspiracy of the Machetes in 1799. But the plan failed, and the population remained loyal to the Spanish king. In 1808, Napoleon forced the two rulers of Spain, King Charles IV and Ferdinand VII, to abdicate, and he installed his brother on the throne. In the absence of a legitimate king, the people of New Spain created juntas, locally formed governments that would serve in place of the Spanish colonial government. The Viceroy of Mexico City, José de Iturrigaray, disputed the legitimacy of the Spanish juntas and created his own. This worried the conservatives and the Peninsulares, so he was arrested and removed from his post. Miguel Hidalgo, a criollo priest in Dolores, began to speak against Spanish policies, notably merchants that were withholding grain during a drought in 1807. The authorities began to move against him, so in 1810, Hidalgo called on the population to join him in a rebellion against the authorities in Mexico. He, like most of the population, was still loyal to the deposed King Ferdinand, but his cry of Dolores attracted a small army of mainly criollos to join him, including famous military leader Ignacio Allende. Meanwhile, across Spanish America, similar movements against the Spanish authorities took hold, and as Hidalgo's army marched on the capital, they were joined by tens of thousands of men and defeated the Royal Spanish Army outside Mexico City in October. But his army suffered heavy losses, and fearing an encounter with well-trained troops holding a defensive position in Mexico City, Hidalgo retreated towards Guadalajara. Many consider this retreat a huge tactical error because Spain regrouped and defeated the insurgent army at the Battle of the Bridge of Calderon in early 1811. After Hidalgo and the remnants of his army were captured as they tried to escape to the United States, they were found guilty of treason and sentenced to death. The heads of Hidalgo and Allende were preserved and displayed as a warning. José María Morelos took control of the revolution, won a series of battles, and captured Acapulco, Huautla, and Oaxaca. He also convened the Congress of Chilpancingo in 1813, where Mexico formally declared its independence from Spain and the first national constitution was ratified. But his further campaigns proved to be unsuccessful, and he was captured and executed in 1815. Meanwhile, Guadalupe Victoria in Puebla and Vicente Guerrero in Oaxaca continued to lead the insurgency. But the independence movement had largely ran out of momentum because in Europe, Ferdinand VII had been reinstalled as King of Spain, and the Spanish sent armies to reconquer regions like Chile, which had broken free from Spanish rule. The Spanish continued to fight the Venezuelans and in Mexico. In 1820, Colonel Agustin Iturbide was tasked with defeating Guerrero's insurgents in Oaxaca. But while Iturbide was on the march to confront the rebels, liberals in Spain led a coup against Ferdinand and established a new government. They brought back the Constitution of 1812, which was a liberal constitution created by the juntas fighting Napoleon. But it was seen as a threat to the traditional beliefs of Iturbide and the loyalists, so he and the royal army decided to switch sides and join the rebels. Guerrero and Iturbide then created the Plan of Iguala, which guaranteed Mexico would be independent and Catholic, and the Peninsulares and the Criollos would enjoy equal rights. Iturbide led the army of the Three Guarantees, which swelled with new recruits, so the viceroy, now unable to combat them, resigned. On August 21, 1821, the Treaty of Córdoba formally recognized Mexican independence, but 1 month later, Iturbide dissolved the Congress and declared himself Emperor Agustin I. He managed to temporarily annex Central America, which peacefully declared independence from Spain the same year. But his reign would be short, and military men would dominate Mexican politics throughout the 19th century. Mexico had gained its independence, but before the nation would enter the modern era, it would experience economic hardships, weakened by constant coups, civil wars, and invasions. Today, Mexico celebrates its independence on 2 days. September 16 to honor Hidalgo's Grito de Dolores, the start of the independence insurgency, and on September 27 to celebrate political independence from Spain. We'd like to thank Japsy for hosting us on this episode.
Okay, so here we have seen how the Mexico become independent, and now we have, as usual, a session question. Few I collected, and the rest you have to see at the end of your lesson. You will find assessment, and you will attempt all those questions and the definitions mentioned over there. So few questions like what happened as a result of the Opium War, how did foreigners begin to gain control over China, what was the Taiping Rebellion, what was the Boxer Rebellion, how did isolation end in Japan, what steps did Emperor Mutsuhito take to modernize Japan, how did Japan increase its influence in Asia, how did Japan expand its empire to Korea, who was Santa Anna, what losses did Mexicans suffer under Santa Anna, how did conservatives oppose La Reforma. And at the end, like always, the task for today is to prepare your assessment for chapter assessment of chapter 28, and you will find it in your books from on page 802 till 822. So meantime, take care of yourself. Inshallah, see you again. Bye bye.